I will say this too. As hard as starting is, it's not the hardest part.
Mm.
Staying is the hardest part.
Mm.
I've been thinking about this recently. I started taking up drums again. I used to play drums a little bit, and I stopped for many, many years. And I'm taking it up again. And I was thinking, like, God, if I had just played 10 minutes a day for the past 20 years, I'd be amazing.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of not stopping, actually.
Yeah.
The starting is the easiest part. I can go buy a drum set. I can do a lesson. Like, that's not like the hard part, actually. It's like doing it every day and not stopping is the hard part. That's the real hard stuff, is continually doing something. And I think that that's ultimately what ends up blocking a lot of ideas. Is someone has an idea, they get started on it, in whatever capacity that is, and then they run out of steam or they lose interest. And by the way, that might be a good idea. Maybe there was nothing there, right? If you can't maintain interest, it might be a good idea to stop. But that's the hardest part, is to sustain.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard. Um, and I think that that's ultimately what stops a lot of people. It's not the start. I think a lot of people get started.
Mm-hmm.
It's sustaining is where people fall off.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. It's funny
Yeah.
because going back to the kids, talking to my son, he played trumpet for the first time this year. And we had this
Cool.
conversation similar to the drums. Is I said, when you hit that plateau, that first plateau, you're going to struggle. And sure enough, he did a couple months in. He's like, I don't like this and whatever. I'm like, because you got good enough to think that you should be an expert. But that's not the
Right.
case.
That's it.
You hit the plateau. Now you have to kind of check yourself and then
Yeah.
get better.
That's exactly it. I mean, that'd be a good book or article about the plateau, because it essentially, what happens is you get pretty good pretty quickly. Like, humans are really quite good at getting decent enough pretty quickly at almost anything. And then you're like, okay, now I'm stuck. Like, you're so much better than you were 3 months ago, but now you feel stuck. And that's where people tend to give up. And this happens in companies, because you make a product and you put it out there, and like there's an initial buzz and people get pumped up about it or whatever. And then like it settles in. And I remember when we launched Hey, our email service, hey.com, it was everywhere for the first year. Like, everyone was talking about it. It was a whole new thing, radically different take on email, lots of press. And then I started hearing on Twitter, like a year or two in, or actually a year after that. So about 2 years in, like, whatever happened to Hey? It's like, Hey's doing great, actually. It's just not like in the news
Yeah.
anymore,
Right.
because like now we're in the plateau phase. Like, the excitement's out of the way, and now we've got a real product on our hands and real customers on our hands. We have to iterate and improve that. And now you get into the grind stuff. I mean, it can still be super fun, but it's not quite as fun as the initial blast off, right? You're now on the mission to Mars, and you've got, well, this is a weird analogy, but whatever the time frame is, the blast off is exciting, and then you're sitting in there and just settling in at the same speed for millions and millions and millions of miles until you actually finally land somewhere. And the same thing is true about the product. It's like the blast off is super exciting, and then you got to sit around for a long time and make it better and do all the other work and customer service and fix bugs and all the stuff that's maintenance related and improvement related. And then maybe at some point you get somewhere else with it, or maybe you don't. Maybe you're just constantly just in that phase. But that's what a business is. A business is mostly mundane, incremental improvement. Sometimes you have some breakthroughs, but mostly it's not that. And you've got to get comfortable with that, I think, to stick around for a long time.
No, 1,000%. Well, it's funny because as I was preparing,
It's your point, like your show, like, just get started. Starting is important, obviously. I
oh
want to
yeah.
make sure that's clear. You got to start, but that's not ultimately the hardest part, is what I'm trying to get at.
Well, and the thing
Yeah.
is, what I've tried to reiterate with just get started for many years is just you're always starting a new phase. Like, it's a continual feedback
Right.
loop. That growth loop is continual happen. You don't just start once. You're actually starting because you're in a different position than you were a year or two, 5 years ago.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're making new products all the time, and even like every 6 weeks, we make a new feature or two or three or four for Basecamp and Hey and other products. And that's starting too. So we're always starting something new, which is, by the way, one of the things I think is important. Part of what you need, if you're in this for the long term, are a bunch of starts. You need, like, you don't want to work on, once something's out, you don't want to work on something forever before it gets out the door again, because that's really hard. It's hard to sustain interest when you don't get those bursts of shipping or release. So that's why we kind of, every 6 weeks we're shipping new stuff every 6 weeks. sometimes much shorter period of time than that. But we've got to be in that cadence to make new things and start again, make new things and start again to kind of keep the interest going.